I'm making a follow-up video to hunting wolves because after watching it probably like 17 times while editing it and stuff, I started to realize there were some gaps and I wanted to make sure that I explained some things. So follow along if you want to go hunting wolves. Oh, it's embarrassing. I shouldn't have done that part. I could take it out in editing. I guess what I'm wanting to clarify in this video is making sure, because you know how I started the last video saying it was spiritual discernment, and then I tried to correlate and showing how there needs to be not only a certain patience, but when you're new in the faith, you probably have a lot of questions and also a lot of fears. You want to work out your salvation through fear and trembling. So for example, you know, maybe you're going to a church and you're let's say has a woman pastor, or your pastor listens to classic like all kinds of old 80s metal hairband stuff, or just there's just things that make you like that don't sit right with your heart, and so you're like, well, I don't know if I can belong to this church, I don't know if I can belong, and there's, you know, that's stuff that you should definitely take into prayer and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is, those are the kind of pastors that we should be loving through and approaching them, and if they're teachable, and you know, how do they receive that? And I'm sure the weight on their shoulders is heavy. Being a shepherd of a church of, you know, even 10 or more, you know, that's 10 people's lives that you are pouring into constantly, and you know, that can be exhausting. So there's this weight, you know, on these pastors' shoulders that we need to be considerate of. We don't know their walk, but what we do is, you know, the Spirit can easily be revealing things to us about them, but we shouldn't just go out there, you know, or accusing, or, oh, he's a heretic because he's wrong on this. He's wrong on this theological point he's wrong on, therefore he's a heretic. It's not at all okay. We have to learn to love each other, is the point that I guess I keep trying to say. Now, where I wanted to cause some clarity. Now, let's say for example, we'll stay with the pastor because it seems to be a relatable subject, and we'll keep using a pastor. Sorry, I'm not picking on pastors. If there's pastors watching this, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you. I mean, it may feel like it, but I'm not, I promise. All right, so let's say there's a pastor, right? And he's committing adultery. You approach him and stuff, but that's not, you don't have to stay in that church. That's not what I'm sitting here saying. I'm not saying love him through it. No, if your pastor is cheating on his wife, or he's doing inappropriate, you know, sexual immorality things, no, there's no you needing to stay under that at all. What I'm talking about is like that spiritual discernment stuff where you can see in their heart it's good, right? So you don't cheat on your wife and have good intentions. No. However, I can see a pastor maybe participating in things that maybe he shouldn't, thinking that it's going to be a way to witness to people or something. Examples could be, and there's nothing inherently wrong with these. So when I list these, please don't say like I'm saying these are a sin. I'm saying that pastors are, one, held to a higher accountability, and two, you can do these things, but all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. And sometimes there's just things that we shouldn't do. And there's certain levels of sanctification. And as a pastor, you know, there are some things that should be beyond you. I'll say, for example, and I'm sure this could be controversial, but for me it's not. Let's say magic. Let's say you're that magic game, right? Let's say the pastor uses that magic game to witness to the youth, or witness to, you know, they open a convention booth, and they pray for people at these gatherings, but they're also playing the game magic. Now, I can see how God can use that. God can use things in spite of people all the time. God can use a donkey. What I'm saying is yes, I can see how God can use that, but is it necessarily beneficial? For me, someone who sees the unseen realm, because I walk by faith, not by sight, someone who understands it, someone who recognizes it and has experience with it, I would see that there is a lack of spiritual discernment, is how I would say it. But it doesn't mean that there's not a love for God. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden because he does this that I should be like, whoa, this pastor does this, I'm out. Absolutely not. That is not at all what we're called to be or how we're called to operate. Now, if I have issue with it, I can tell him why. I can point out the truths and say, here's this and this, and let God do the convicting. I don't have to do any condemning. There's a difference. In my heart, like I want the best for. I don't take joy in any kind of critique, and I definitely don't take joy in trying to say someone's wrong or anything. Like that's not who I am. I don't get joy out of confrontation. Now, that being said, is there reason for concern? Sure, there's always reasons for concern. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't operate in worry and we shouldn't operate in fear. Yes, you work out your salvation through fear and trembling, making sure you're doing the right thing. That's good for your heart, but it's not a works-based salvation that we're talking about here. We're talking about by faith you are saved. We walk by faith, not by sight. I'm looking to bring attention to the fact that there are times that we need to leave a church or leave an organization or basically under certain headship. But that is not what I'm seeing the problem in churches right now. What the problem I'm seeing is the fact is when there are these discrepancies or when there's things that are disagreed upon that are secondary issues or maybe still important, but not to the point of causing a schism, not to the point of where you're literally cutting off your right hand. I can imagine someone saying like, well, if your right hand causes you to sin, you should cut it off. Absolutely, right? But is that right hand causing you to sin? Are you sinning? If you are, let's think about it. Like, is there imperfection causing you to sin, or can you be the salt and light? Are you able to fill the void? If you see a void that maybe the pastor's not filling, are you able to fill it? Because God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So you go and fill it and he will qualify you. This is where you get people getting gifts of the Spirit that they never even knew they had, because now they're filling a void. God's called them to something and now they're able to do something. They've laid their hands on someone, they prayed for someone and they got healing. And they're like, whoa, that's never happened before. Well, that's because now you're filling a void that it's not about you going out and trying to heal someone. God called you to do something where you went and healed someone. Why didn't anyone tell me? Man, gosh, that's just horrible. Fixed it for now. Look, I guess if your right hand is causing you to sin, cut it off. Meaning, like, if there's a part of the body that's literally, like, that's the pastor committing adultery, cut it off. But if it's something where it's gray, or it's something that you can love them through or allow God to work in them, this is like having people go to your church that are perpetual sinning. You don't tell them they can't come to your church. You don't tell them they're not welcome. It's come as you are. It literally means come as you are. Not do this first and then you can come. That's works. There's a cry or a call that I'm trying to do here in video 2, which is make sure that there's an understanding that we as Christians are responsible for taking care of each other. For those of you that are spiritually experienced and very knowledgeable, you have a responsibility to be teaching. If you're done fighting, in the war, well, then you have a responsibility to at least teach the rest of us that are going to go fight, that are in the war. Because there's a spiritual war. 100% there is a spiritual war. There's those of us that are called to rest and wait in the Lord, and God has things called timing, and there's all those of us that are called to be in the front lines. But no matter what, we're not called to be there alone. We're there to fight as a family in the spiritual war, and we're there to enjoy and have peace with each other and through corporate worship and fellowship. But we're there to support each other, encourage each other too. And there's just not a lot of that as soon as we find disagreements, or if we see someone that's... Look, I just really want to see a lot more grace and a lot more mercy coming from us, and a whole lot less eagerness to be so trigger happy. And that's it. All right, I'm gonna make this one short. All right, love you guys. Bye.